Cincinnati artist Mallory Feltz likes to build things that explore the theme of home.
Home is such a broad topic. It can be a physical structure. It can also just be the idea of being comfortable. And it's really multi-layered and complex, and so there's a lot of room to explore and play in that atmosphere. And I like to experiment with materials, so it provided a really wonderful opportunity to think about how materials and objects can be the manifestations of the concept of home. I also just love building things and working with my hands and taking things apart and figuring out how they work and then putting them back together. When I was deciding what to do with my career, it was between the arts and science, and I ultimately decided to go into the arts because it allowed me to not only be creative, but also to use science in order to create my works. Homage is a piece that really solidified for me that I wanted to focus on this theme of home. And I was inspired to make that piece because when I first moved to Louisiana for grad school, it was in 2006, and Katrina had happened the year before. And I wasn't there when it happened, but you could still see the impact and feel the impact of that devastation everywhere you went. And I just always remembered those blue tarps on people's homes everywhere. And so that piece was really in honor of what people had to do to try to recover and how it took so much away from everyone. Imago is a nature center in Price Hill, and it's an organization that I really love. Their mission is to connect people in nature. They started a program called Art on Their Trails, where they commissioned artists to create works that would be on their trails for a year. I created the piece called Local Support, which is a collection of Ohio rocks that are wrapped in different colored yarn. I reached out to local farms, alpaca farms and sheep farms, and purchased the wool directly from the farmers and used different dyeing techniques using natural materials like onion skins and avocados and red cabbage to create a spectrum of colors for the yarn, and took each stone and wrapped each one in little lines, delicate patterns, and then arranged them out on the entrance trail to Imago. So it's a way of drawing attention to your immediate surroundings and seeing the bountiful possibilities within such a small area. So the idea is that these rocks are almost like little gifts, and people can move them around and create different compositions within the installation, or pick up a rock and take it with them while they're hiking and drop it somewhere else. And since they're all natural materials, the piece will degrade over time and it won't harm the environment. When Blink was being talked about as a light and art festival, I saw it as a unique opportunity to challenge myself even more, go back to that experimentation that I really like to do. The fact that the festival was going to be open to everyone, it was in the public sphere, that really intrigued me, and that's what I want my work to be about. I want it to be accessible, approachable, and I want people to see it. For Blink 2017, I created the piece called Easy Breezy. It was a series of 33 umbrellas outlined in electroluminescent wire. Motion sensors were connected to it that triggered motors on a select few of the umbrellas. And so when you would walk down the alleyway underneath these beautiful illuminated lights, some of the umbrellas would move and dance in response to you being with the piece. For Blink 2019, I created the piece called Toy Box, which is a series of 7 giant nightlights based on classic toys. And at the front of each one of the nightlights is a motion sensor that would turn the lights on. So when you walk by them, just like a regular nightlight, they illuminate. And this idea of activation by the audience was important to me. These 7 giant nightlights were installed around Findlay Market, a very family-friendly area with a lot of activity going on, so I knew they would get a lot of activation. But one thing I noticed when just sitting back and watching people interact with these pieces was a lot of people thought it was a button that made the light turn on, and they were wanting that sort of physical activation point. So I kept that in mind. If Blink were to happen again, what could I do differently? And how could I make that activation be more personal? For the 3rd time in 2022, I went back to using domestic objects, things that are in our home that maybe we don't think about or are overlooked, but are so recognizable. And I created the piece Linger, which is a series of 12 lamps that on their lampshades, there's words and phrases written in glow-in-the-dark paint. And when guests come and step on the foot pedal, it turns on the lamp, which then charges the paint. And if they take their foot off the pedal, the light goes dark, but the words glow. And then over time, those words will fade and they'll need to be charged again. And that's where a really magical moment comes in, where it's making art directly accessible and encouraging your creativity to collaborate with an artist using their creativity. So Linger is that piece connecting us that says, we all have those internal thoughts. And, we're getting through this pandemic and we're doing it together. And it's sort of a celebration piece too, because Blink is happening again and we can be all together. So I want people to walk away seeing my work, making connections within themselves and their surroundings and other people.